Well, good morning. That'll get you up and dancing. Welcome to you all on this, in Texas anyway, bright and sunshiny day. We invite you into our spiritual community of hope, courage, and compassion. I'd like for you to take a deep breath and release it as we ready our hearts and minds to enter this precious space together. I'm going to light the chalice to begin our service. As the opening suggests, I can see clearly now. Today, we will look into what it means to see and be seen. We are pleased once again to have our Rebecca Mattis, I say our because we own her, she's ours, back with us today, and she will talk about spiritual graffiti. So get your spray cans out and ready. As you know, Rebecca is from Rutland, Vermont. Is it bright, sunshiny day there, Rebecca?
No, it's a bright,
No.
cloudy day.
Nah, well, we'll pretend that it is. Rebecca teaches math and English to adult students, including English language learners from all over the world. To her great delight. It's something that she loves doing. And besides that, she loves creating, writing very interesting, varied topics for sermons. And she's been doing so for many years. So we are delighted to have her back. Thank you, Rebecca, for being with us again today.
Thank you, Mary. And hello to everybody. When a baby is born, it cries. The cry tells us that it is alive and breathing. The sound of it rocks our world. The cry also directs caring attention to the baby. The cry says, "I am here, pay attention." As the child grows, she says, "Daddy, look at me." Every skill being practiced demands witness. It feels like if no one sees you do the somersault doesn't count. To a baby, to a child, adult attention is as important as oxygen. This moderates as we get older and matures in its expression, but the need never goes away. Even adults can die of invisibility. On a list of spiritual needs, we might find the need to give and receive love, the need to understand and be understood, and the need to value others and to be valued as human beings. So many human needs are mutual and reciprocal. The needs are met in the context of human relationship. In fact, the needs themselves build the relationship. But even before one is loved, before one could be understood or valued, one needs to be seen, to be noticed. I wonder if being noticed is the most basic spiritual need of all. And I wonder if it's because it's so basic that it's both entirely unremarkable and sometimes earth-shaking. In people of all ages, the mutual nature of the human need to be seen means that we also have a need for self-expression. I think this is true throughout life and throughout history. People have been expressing themselves since the beginning of time. Cave art is one way humans have done this. And right now, to my knowledge, the oldest known example is this one. This enigmatic drawing was made by Neanderthals. There's this ladder shape in the middle, and I don't think we can see it in this image, but there's actually outlines of animals inside those rectangles there. It's amazing to see this, 64,000 years old, made by an artist or artists of a whole different species of human. Do you ever wish you could go back in time and meet the people who roamed the earth so long ago? In many ways, these ancient people are forever unknown to us, but at least we have these wonderful glimpses of them. Here's another example from Indonesia this time, and this dates from over 40,000 years ago. Notice the hand stencils over the back of the pig. There's something about placing one's hand on a surface and outlining it that seems so natural, almost instinctive. We all traced our hands when we were little, using crayons instead of ochre paint. To me, the hand stencil says, "I am here," but without words. Here's another petroglyph, which was created over many centuries from 1,000 to 9,000 years ago in Argentina. How beautiful and amazing that these hands are just like the hands on the Indonesian cave halfway around the world. I want to note that these cave paintings are not only examples of human self-expression, but of human technology. The red, white, and black paints required time and effort to develop, as did the bone pipes that were used to spray the paint. Unlike other technologies like needles, spears, and plows, paint wasn't created in order to meet the physical needs of humans for food and clothing. It seems to me to have been created only, or mostly, in order to meet spiritual needs. As time passed and human technology developed, human graffiti developed along with it, especially with the invention of writing. The Roman city of Pompeii, which was destroyed with the eruption of Mount Vesuvius, is well known for the graffiti that covered its walls. And this one is a favorite. And if anyone knows Latin or Romance languages, you can see hic fuimus, here we were. It says, "We two dear men, friends forever, were here. If you want to know our names, they are Gaius and Aulus." The oldest known piece, and unfortunately I don't have a picture, is from about 78 BC, and it merely says, "Gaius Pomidius Diphilus was here," with the date, October 3rd. Again, there's that simple human urge, like a handprint on a cave wall, like a newborn's cry. To write one's name is a magical thing. It's the first thing a person learns to write. There's power to it. There's also a time travel aspect to it. When you write your name, all of a sudden, you not only exist in the moment, but you can communicate across time and space. That's why Gaius said, "Gaius was here," instead of "Gaius is here." He was purposefully communicating with future readers. Once again, we behold the mutual two-way street that is the human gaze. Gaius was looking forward through time, although perhaps not this far forward, and we look back at him. Archaeology is, in a sense, a spiritual endeavor, or at least it has a spiritual component. As we gaze upon or hold in our hands the meager evidence of humans long past, we seek to understand them. There's so much we don't know about people long dead, but we do value them and cherish the mementos they left to us. It is just as much a spiritual need to value another person's humanity as it is to be valued ourselves. The oldest piece of graffiti I've ever seen myself was on a tree in Emigrant Gap near Lake Tahoe, California. And here it is. A man named Pedro had cut his name into a young aspen tree in 1919. I saw it in the 21st century, all stretched out in the bark of the 100-year-old tree. Pedro might have been a Basque shepherd looking for work in the waning sheep industry of that time and place. Or maybe he was just a traveler, driving his Model T up or down the switchbacks of the narrow, winding highway. Very likely, the aspen grove held graffiti from previous Basque immigrants, probably those who walked through the gap in the mid-1800s. I imagine that he was inspired by that to make his own mark. It was a wonderful thing for me to see it nearly a century after he made it. I too was an emigrant to the West once upon a time. In 1975, when I was 5 years old, my mom took us 3 kids away from our dad in New Jersey and brought us to California. On our way, we stopped at the Bonneville Salt Flats in western Utah. We saw the names of previous travelers spelled out in black rocks on the flats. My sister, Moon, and my brother, Eric, decided to spell their names too. There we were, just like Pedro, just like Gaius, inspired by the names of others, and prompted by a most profound and primordial urge to leave our marks. I want to tell you more about that journey to California. My mom had her reasons to leave my dad, and I never questioned my new reality. I just floated along, sometimes bewildered and woeful, sometimes stout and sturdy. It was a cold, wet autumn, and in California, our shelters were pretty sketchy. For 1 month, my mom rented a room in which all 4 of us slept on one bed. And for at least another month, we lived in a tent in the cold, wet woods. It was a hard time, but I can't say if it was a bad time for me or a good time. It left a mark on me is all I can say. My heart was torn a little, and ink was rubbed into the tear. As it healed, and as I grew, the tattoo stretched, just like graffiti on an aspen tree. I can't read it, but I feel it. Over the next several years, my sister Moon and my brother Eric and I went back and forth from coast to coast. Generally and comparatively speaking, life was good for me. People talk about adverse childhood experiences. I had very few of those. But those years affected me very significantly, for worse and for better. They were such peculiar times. It was the hippie era, at least it still was in Northern California, an era that disappeared with the arrival of the 1980s. I remember things, but for the most part, I feel alienated from my memories in a way that's hard to explain. Moving back and forth made me feel like a foreigner everywhere I went. My experiences in California in the mid-70s seem locked away, almost unreal. It feels like being haunted. So even as I reassure you about my childhood, I still want you to understand the struggles I've had with it. Not only have I felt alienated from that time past, I've also felt very lonely in it, isolated in my memories and heartsore at times. Even as I acknowledge the important ways the experience proved my ability to face and meet challenges, with every passing year, I desire more and more to protect the bewildered little girl that I was. As of now, those 6 months were only 1% of my life, but make up a very large chunk of my narrative identity, and I'm always contending with it in one way or another. Are you ever haunted by memories or by the vague shadows of memories? I wonder if this kind of thing happens to everyone. Maybe everyone feels like the past is lost, or that some parts of it are painfully distant, and that old times or old memories, whether sad or happy, are weirdly kept away from our grasp. Let's come back to the present for more graffiti. Here is another form of wall art. I don't know why this tagger chose this particular mode of self-expression, but I don't like it. She makes paintings in beautiful places and then posts them online. To me, graffiti in natural settings destroys the beauty of those settings, and the paint pollutes the environment, and it mars a sacred landscape. This particular graffitist was charged with vandalism for tagging in multiple national parks and was sentenced to community service. What she did bothers me a lot. But imagine how people might feel 40,000 years from now if they found this very painting. They might think it's a wonderful connection to the people who came before them. Beauty is most certainly in the eye of the beholder. I doubt I will ever see contemporary graffiti in nature as beautiful. However, the next time I see it, I'm going to try to think about the person who made it, to see them as a human who is expressing a deep need to be seen. Even though I strongly dislike how that expresses itself, I can certainly empathize with the need. Just a few years ago, I was reading Basin and Range by John McPhee. He was a writer who had a gift for narrative, even when writing about cold, hard science. And this book is one of several that he wrote about geology. And here's what he said about the Bonneville Flats. I passed graffiti on the Bonneville Flats. There being nothing to carve in, and no medium substantial enough for sprayed paint, the graffitists had lugged cobbles out onto the hard mud, stones as big as grapefruit, ballast from the interstate, and in large dotted letters had written their names: Ross, Don, Judy, Mark, Moon, Eric, 50 or 60 miles of names. That's us. Moon has to be my sister, and the Eric that's next to her must be my brother. When I read this for the first time, I felt an amazing set of emotions. All of a sudden, it seemed that the past that had been locked away was suddenly real again, that the things in my memory weren't just ghosts in my brain, but something that had actually happened. In short, I felt seen, and I felt real. The burden I had been dragging along for so many years was suddenly lifted, and it stayed lifted for quite a while. McPhee continues. Eric's lithography was in basalt and dolomite, pieces of Greyback Mountain, apparently, pieces of the Stansburys. His name, if it sits there a century or so, will eventually explode. Salt will work into the stones along the grain boundaries. When this happens, water evaporates out of the salt, and salt crystals keep collecting and expanding until they explode the rock. In Death Valley are thousands of little heaps of crumbs that were once granite boulders. It's my brother's name that's gonna explode in 100 years. Actually, I think his name is gone already, since I went to Google Earth and could find no trace of any names spelled in rocks along Route 80 west of Salt Lake. No matter. The important thing is that McPhee saw it, and that I know that he saw it. We left traces at Bonneville, and he witnessed those traces. Witness has various definitions, especially in religious contexts, but I'm using it here to mean a particular kind of seeing that has emotional import. If we are in pain, it can be just such a relief to know that someone witnesses. They don't even have to say anything. In fact, it's often better when they don't say much. If they just see and tell us that they see and just sit there with us, it shifts a burden. Their witnessing gives our brains some kind of reassurance that we are here and we aren't crazy. It calms us. I hope you have experienced moments like this in your lives, when you have felt fully seen and understood. Sometimes, though, people don't see us the way we would wish to be seen. Sometimes we don't see others the way they would wish. Just for one mild example, notice that John McPhee didn't ask who Moon and Eric were. Instead, he saw their names as collections of rocks put into some sort of temporary order by human beings. His goal was to use the names to give the readers a human inroad and connection to his explanation of the geology. And so he placed my brother's name not in the context of an uprooted young boy, which of course he knew nothing about, but in the context of over 500 million years of geologic history. John McPhee saw my brother's name and gave it a meaning my brother could not have imagined in September 1975. And then McPhee wrote about it, and from his writing, I took a meaning, nearly 4 decades after its publication, that McPhee could not have imagined. Interestingly, I continue to take more meaning from this passage and from this chapter of the book in many more layers than I'm able to explain right now, all of which have to do with placing my story into the context of a wider human story and a much longer human history. It makes me feel a lot less lonely. We are always making our marks in the world, not only when we write on walls or in books, but when we create art of all kinds. Then the art goes out into the world and is seen by others. When other people look at our creations, they see what they see, not necessarily what we intended them to see. Every moment of expression affects each experiencer differently, and it's wonderful to see how our writing, art, and work can take on a life of its own with the illuminating light of other people's attention. And I talk about writing art and work, but I also mean our own lives, our own beings, the way we manifest in the world. So that's why I always ask for responses after my sermons. I want to know what you think and feel about what I've said, or what new thoughts have been sparked for you. It's why musicians need people to move or dance to their music, or to see them sit stock still and transfixed. We need to complete the relationship, not only to express ourselves, but to be seen and heard. Not only to be seen and heard, but to see and hear in our turn. The English language, and probably other languages, speak about light and vision using the same words. Light can shine, and so can eyes. Both can be gleaming, glaring, glancing, and glowing. Physically, seeing is a matter of light entering our eyes and getting processed by the brain. Metaphorically, seeing is both receiving and sending. Seeing shines the flashlight of our attention upon the object of our interest. What we see is then reflected back upon what is seen. It's a beautiful and endless dance of human expression and reception. This dance of reciprocal seeing might be the foundation of all human interaction and maybe even all meaning. I don't know if that statement is profound or simply obvious. Maybe it's both. In this chapter of Basin and Range, John McPhee discusses the limitations of geology. He says, geologists are famous for picking up 2 or 3 bones and sketching an entire and previously unheard of creature. But he also explains the magic of it. They look at mud and see mountains. In mountains, oceans. In oceans, mountains to be. They go up to some rock and figure out a story. Another rock, another story. And as the stories compile through time, they connect. And long case histories are constructed and written from interpreted patterns of clues. Archaeology has the same magic and the same limitation. I cannot be 100% certain of the correctness of what I said about the petroglyphs I showed you. That's the beauty of science. It's all a big conversation among human brains that see, imagine, and explain. At its best, science is a matter of curiosity and devotion to the truth. Human understanding is the same. I don't live in your mind, of course. I only have clues. If I have humility and curiosity, I can connect with you and we can create a relationship in which our mutual witness builds something much greater than the sum of its parts. I also, and this is important, do not have all the facts about my own life or my own mind. Inside of my skull, my brain is absolutely dark. And so I depend on the imagination and curiosity of all, myself and others, in order to understand my own self, to build my story and the meaning in my life. This is true when people shine their light into the depths of my heart and make me cry with the relief of being understood. And also, and this is very important, it's true when people observe things in me that I cannot observe in myself or do not want to observe in myself. And if they see things that aren't there at all, well, we can argue about that and connect that way. Our stories belong, and we belong, not only to ourselves, but to each other. We need to express ourselves and behold the self-expression of others. We need to be seen, and other people need to be allowed to see us, to see our stories and our lives, and to fold what they see into their own constantly changing construction of meaning. You can apply this philosophy not just to other people, but to the other people that you once were, to your history. As you gaze upon your past selves, and maybe see them gaze back at you, you will always be building a new story. I have only a few final words. As we have seen today, we can never predict and often never know how our witness affects people. Perhaps sometimes observation is unwelcome, but still I venture to say that to notice someone is nearly always beneficial, especially in modern times. I think we should err on the side of seeing, especially noticing the people with whom we share physical space, even complete strangers. I hereby share my intention with you to mind my own business a little bit less and to see a little bit more. And you all are my witnesses. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Rebecca. I love that challenge at the end. We're going to take time now, as we usually do with Rebecca. We call it our response or sharing time. So if you have a comment or a thought about her reflection just now, or a question for her, just raise your hand. You can do the icon if you want, but I think I can get everybody on the screen. So anybody want to throw something out there for Rebecca? Kathleen, can you unmute? There you go.
So much. I'm struggling at age 93 to finish it. And the reason I'm working on this book is that I want people to know that I have thoughts.
Hey, Kathleen, you're kind of gargly still. I know you said you struggled with. Can you put in chat maybe your thought? Thank you. We'll look for that. And while you see chat at the bottom of your screen.
I'm sure that I don't forget it.
And while Kathleen's figuring out her chat, maybe we could. Okay, Vera and Richard, if you'll unmute. There we go.
Rebecca, I really enjoyed that. You bring some depth, a lot of depth in your reflections. You know, a couple of reactions that I had. One, graffiti. I have hated graffiti. I lived in downtown Austin, and it just burned me up to see a nice white background and somebody had to scrawl their name. Some of it was vulgar, but you know, there was a couple that really caught my attention. There's a rail bridge over Lady Bird Lake, and somebody, I still don't know how they did it, had to get on that bridge and go over the side and paint these big letters. I've forgotten what the letter said, but I was always amazed at that, mainly trying to think how somebody did that. And anyway, so, but you know, graffiti, we live with it and all that. As you point out, it could be great for history. Although I wonder when people look back at some of the things that have been written on the walls, what they'll think of us. Another reflection I had was memories about myself. And a couple of years ago, after I was retired, I decided to write my history. I've been encouraging Vera to do that because I found it really satisfying to go back and extract from your brain what you remember about various things. And I did it because I knew my memory was getting shakier and shakier. So I said, well, I better do this now while I've got some memory left and give it to our kids and grandkids. Of that group of kids and grandkids, I think our grandkids appreciated it the most. I'm not even sure some of our kids have read it. Maybe they just didn't want to know anything more. But I also felt like I didn't know my dad very well. And you know, grew up. He died unfortunately at age of 57 when I was in my 20s, and I never took time growing up to really understand his background. So I did that. That was one of the reasons I did that, write that background. And I encourage everybody to do that. I found it very satisfying to go back and write the memories of growing up and Vera and I getting together and all of that. So those are my comments. I really enjoyed your sermon this morning. Vera, you going to say something?
Oh, I was going to do after you finish.
Yeah, I'm finished.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm reverting to the graffiti, and one of my most prominent memories when I was growing up was my father. He was strict about a lot of some things, but he was very kind and loving. But one thing that always stayed with me was that he told us fools' names are like fools' faces, always seen in public places. And that was a quote from him.
That's funny.
Awesome.
Well, I just wanted to reply to Richard about what people would think if they saw the graffiti now, what they would think of us. And the graffiti in Pompeii is just exactly like the graffiti we have now, and it's just exactly like social media. It's the same. It's vulgar. It's insulting. It's humans have not changed.
Thank you, Richard and Vera. Carol?
Yeah, they were, I'm tongue-tied. Rebecca, thank you again for appearing before us and helping me understand stuff and think about stuff that I had thought about before. When you started talking about holding something, an object, I was right back in the Orkney Islands, which are off the northeast coast of Scotland. We went there for birds. I didn't know how many Neolithic ruins there were there. And because they're so common, one farmer who wanted the Scottish archaeology people to come look at his site, they never did because there were so many others, which meant that his weren't officially preserved. You could go into his farmhouse, and there was a room there where there were objects that were 5,000 years old that you could pick up and hold in your hand, which is an entirely different experience than seeing it on some page or on TV or something. It was holy. It was wonderful. They don't know what most of those objects were because they didn't appear to have any utilitarian value. They were objects of beauty, maybe spiritual objects. It was just glorious. And then one other thing, this same man's land, if you walk down a path, there was he'd excavated this kind of room, but to get in there, you had to lie on your back on something like a skateboard and pull yourself into this room that had chambers in it where there were bones stacked. They took apart the bodies, and like the heads, the skulls were in one part and the legs were in another part. It was just astounding. I don't know what else to say other than that's what your comments brought up and how just immediate it was to feel something. So I'm holding my hands like this the whole time I'm talking to you like a cup. That's all I got to say. Thank you for bringing that to my mind.
Thank you, Carol. Michael?
Rebecca, thank you as always. I'm looking at the message that came up on my screen. I don't want to unmute it. We'll get feedback. So you reminded me of most of my college was at San Diego State, and graffiti in the bathrooms was really common back then. And some of it was vulgar, but some of it was funny. A lot of it was political. I used to look forward to going to a bathroom I hadn't been in before because there would be. And I remember being really surprised having a conversation with a professor once who was appalled at the graffiti and thought it was horrible. It always seemed to me like it was recent anthropology.
Oh.
And there was somebody who wrote in many bathrooms, repetition is the final resort of the unimaginative. And he did that over and over again. And I wondered if he understood the irony.
That's funny. And you remember that to this day.
To this day.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. Martin, unmute.
I really enjoyed the sermon. Much to think about. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. And I was thinking about the broader context of people in search of eternal life, even if it's just leaving a handprint or some drawing of an animal. And I thought about the Egyptians who mummified people's bodies. At one time, they found so many mummies that they started grinding them up for fertilizer. You know, talk about eternal life, you know. So, but the pursuit of eternal life has become central to Christian beliefs. Uh, my own view is that our eternal life is from the ripples of good deeds, goodness that we do to our fellow people. So that's what I've got. But thank you very much for that sermon. Enjoyed it.
Thank you, Martin. I have Kathleen's chat and then we'll go to David. Kathleen says this message has much meaning to me because at age 93, I'm trying desperately to finish a book. And we know you will, Kathleen. Let's see. A piece of fiction that represents a family much like my own during the 1930s and 40s. I'm close to wrapping it up in order to have my say. Having my say isn't the same as graffiti, but rather leaving a record that I lived and had thoughts. My sincere thanks to your words today with gratitude and love, Kathleen. Lovely, Kathleen. That's very beautiful. All right, we're so glad you're here too, Kathleen. And we look forward to having a book signing with your book when you're done. David and then Dagmar.
I dearly love the sermon, and everybody else has a higher meaning, and all. The question I have is, how did you find the statement in Basin and Range about your brother and sister? How did you happen to stumble on that, or did somebody say you should see this? Or
the book was recommended to me, and so I started reading it, and I couldn't believe what I read there. And the nuttiest thing, I could not believe it. I knew that both my mother and my brother had read this book previously, and neither one said anything.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
And I asked my brother, why didn't you say anything? And he said, I didn't believe it could have been us. There's no other Moon and Eric. You know? It's like it was so odd. So yeah, that's how it was just happenstance.
it's just a remarkable story. Thank you for sharing that part of it.
Yeah.
And I won't even question how your sister got the name Moon. Were they Frank Zappa fans, or?
No, she always hated her given name, and it was the era, of you could change your name, and she did, and she that was a permanent change. She was 9 when she changed it, and that was that.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Did you think to write the author and say that's my sister, my brother?
No, and I think he passed away. So yeah.
Okay. Dagmar?
Well, this brought a lot of thoughts and memories to me. My late husband was an archaeologist, and he worked in Peru and later in Ecuador when Peru became too dangerous. And I was a banker in the beginning with only 2 weeks of paid vacation, but I took my vacations where he worked. And even those people, and he was finding things. People said Greeter had a good eye. He could really recognize a site that would yield good results and was very successful. And even though these people didn't leave graffiti, they still spoke to us in the things they made. And my job was to wash socks in the irrigation ditch, or to wash shards if they were dirty, and mark them, count them, and mark them where they came from, and bag them, and put the tag on the back. And in the evenings, after dinner, we would sit around a big table and try to put shards together. And it was very exciting when you found something that fit it, and you glued it in place and things started taking shape. Like having a jigsaw puzzle where first, you don't know what you're shooting for. And second, you know that you don't have all the pieces. So later, I had interesting, sometimes challenging childhood, being a little kid when Hitler came to power in Germany, and living through 6 years of war and the aftermath. And it was unusual, but compared to what children in war zones live through today, it was child's play. At any rate, from a talk, a reflection, as one in Eliza's sermons, when she talked about food or hunger, she asked me to do a little reflection, and that started me writing and writing more, and I've published a book. Yes, that's my graffiti hunt. And actually a modest little book by somebody not famous, but it has found good reception, and I have been happy with it.
Very good read. The Mushroom Girl, Rebecca. It's beautiful. Joan, thank you, Dagmar. Joan?
I thought while you were speaking, Rebecca, of seeing and re-seeing, how photographs do that for me, and how 8 decades of my life were just splashed all over the big screen for everybody to see at my 80th birthday party, and lined up by David Lawrence for me. And then how nice it is to reflect on where we've been and come from. And so I think that's the same in all of my photography. Every time I look at any photo that I have taken in all my life, the moment comes back. Everything gets to be re-seen. And it's quite interesting to look inward in that way. That's all.
Nice. Good points, all. Thank you. Rebecca, we are complete. Or is there more?
Susan.
Oh, Susan, sorry.
Sorry.
Yes, go,
I
girl.
needed to be seen. I had a lot of thoughts running through my brain. I loved it. Thank you so much. A couple of things I wanted to share. One is I had a poster in my office for the better part of my career, no matter where I was, because I was ultimately I was a trainer. I taught other people how to do their jobs. But it was an Albert Einstein quote, and it said, "Imagination is so much more powerful than knowledge, because without imagination, we would have no new knowledge." And it always struck me as, keep questioning, keep asking, keep looking, and don't just rely on what we think we know. So that's one thing I want to share. And a quick thing, Carol, you're now the bravest person I've ever met in my life. I would no more get on that skateboard and roll myself into a bone full of... No.
Not for you.
I don't even want to see the pictures. But one of the things that happened when you were talking about the artist has something to say and we have something to see, and it just really struck me. And I wrote down, you mentioned the word connections, and to me that's an incredibly powerful word. I think we're all looking to do it on some level, but the first thing that occurred to me when you were talking about it is when you connect, that's when energy is created, right? So you, like, whether you're plugging in, you're connecting the red and the black, whatever you're doing, that's when the energy comes in. And I thought, when we can connect the writer and the reader, the artist and the visitor, the giver to the taker, that is what energizes us, whether we ever directly communicate with each other or not. So,
Susan, what is that from?
I just wrote it just now.
What? Oh my God. Okay, girl, you need to send that out. I'd like a copy, please.
Okay. I just wrote it when she was talking. It was so inspiring. I thought,
Write it on a wall somewhere.
multiple times.
Yeah. Nearest bathroom, go find it. No, that's beautiful. Please, I want to see
Well,
that.
inspired by Rebecca's thing, but yes, I will. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Carol?
Yeah, Rebecca, I have a question for you. When in your life did you start thinking about putting together these kinds of thoughts? What compelled you to do that? To do like sermon type stuff?
I guess it's when I started hearing sermons, which was in around 2007, 2008. I went to a church and there were sermons there and I really liked them. And it made me think, oh, I could do that.
Yeah.
And there were things in my mind that I had been thinking about for decades, sort of developing philosophies and whatnot. And I thought, oh, I could put that into words. I could turn that into a thing and share it. So yeah, it was just the seeing someone else doing it and then having had thoughts that I had been collecting.
And then having the courage to put them together in some sort of coherent whole and then sharing them with other people. I mean, that's very brave.
Yeah.
It did require courage for sure, especially at the beginning.
Yeah.
Well, we love it and love you being here with us as much as we can. And you'll be back with us in October.
Good.
Yeah, yes, well, maybe I was going to ask.
Oh.
This sermon is what there was so much in this sermon that I kind of had to leave out. And I wanted to do more exploration of memory and things like that. And I was wondering if that's something that you all would like to hear in October, just further reflections on this topic.
Yes.
Okay. It's a deal.
It's a deal.
Graffiti.
I have two things to share myself. The last time I was here for my Groundhog Day sermon, someone, I forget who, said, what's going to be next what's with these movie references, and what crazy movie reference is going to be next? Caddyshack? And so I actually have a movie reference for this sermon I need to share it now, which is Steve Martin's movie, The Jerk. In that movie, he's getting they get the phone book and he's excitingly looking in the phone book and he starts jumping up and down, all excited, and my name's in the phone book. I'm somebody now.
Yeah.
So there you go. He saw his name in print and he felt, and the thing is, it's funny, but why is it funny? Because it's true, right? We need to know that we exist.
Raise your hand if you've Googled yourself.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
And was there another one, Rebecca?
Pardon?
Was there another thing you wanted to say? I thought you said you had two.
Well, I thought I would read this poem to send us off.
Okay.
And there's a little slide that goes along with it. And if I was really courageous, I would read it in Russian, but I'm not. It's called Цветок, or Flower, and it's by Pushkin. A dried flower, scentless, forgotten in a book I see. And now with a strange vision, my soul has filled itself. Where did it bloom? When? In what spring? And did it bloom long? And picked by whom? By a stranger's or a familiar hand? And why was it placed here? As a keepsake of a tender meeting? Or of a fateful parting? Or of a solitary walk in the quiet of the fields, in forest shade? And is he still alive? And is she still alive? And where now is their little corner of the world? Or have they already withered, like this unknown flower?
Lovely.
That is wonderful. Thank you. I am so glad we record our services because I know many of us are going to want to go back and review it and see it again. So thank you again for being here today, to Rebecca, to all of you. May we all experience the miracles before us each day, go into the world with love and kindness, and with the intent to be seen and to see clearly others. We will extinguish our candle. That ends our service. And for those of you who need to go, we will send you off with our love ritual. For those of you who can stay, Joan, are you able to do our joys and concerns? Okay.
Okay, so just leave it on.
I will. So for those of you who have to go, we will think of you, love you. We will see you clearly the next time, and appreciate y'all being here. Thanks.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.